Hey, it's Steve with Pennsylvania Faith Coalition, and this is our next segment with J.R. McGee from Extreme Leadership Group. I am so happy to have you here. You're one of the top people that have spoken here, honestly. You're really hard to get a hold of. It takes months to get a hold of this guy. I got to go through his wonderful assistant and get you booked more often. So thank you for taking your time to be here. I know you're traveling all over the world fighting evil, literally. So we had a bunch of questions from our prior video. If you hadn't seen that, you might want to go back and check that one out first. That was more of an introductory, but now we want to get into the weeds, and you had a couple topics that you wanted to cover. So one of the things that we've covered in a prior video with Pastor David Whitney, who is a constitutional professor, we talked about the Islamic invasion of America and how the Muslims are integrating into our country or not. And now we'd like to get your perspective on that, because I think that'll dovetail in really nicely. So what is, as someone who works with the federal government all the time, what is your perspective on this Muslim infiltration into the United States?
It's something that we've studied. And for the last 600 years, Islam has had a strategy. And strategy is kind of my forte. Both of my advanced degrees are in strategic thinking and strategic leadership. And the strategy is rather brilliant. The Islamic community works by immigration. And once they've got 5% or less, they depend on the host country for protection and for funding and for survival. Once they get between 5 and 10%, they begin to establish communities, and they establish cultures. They establish what's often called no-go zones, where they have their own enclaves. When they get between 10 to 15%, they begin to engage in the host country's political activities, and they start getting their own people elected. And as they begin to enter the political arena, they begin to work towards changing the laws to be more Sharia friendly. By the time they get in excess of 15% of the population, between 15 and 25%, they begin to change the laws to implement Sharia and replace the legal system of the host country with a Sharia-compliant legal system. That's been the strategy that they've used all over the world. It's been very successful. If you look at England and France, France is actually very far down this path. France is now, they've exceeded 15% of the population. They are rapidly integrating Sharia law into the French culture. They're replacing the French population as a dominant culture. There's large portions of Paris and some of the major cities where if you're a French person, you can't go. You're no longer allowed to go there. The same thing is happening in Great Britain and England. They're about 5 years behind France. But just look, the politicians in England are mostly Islamic now. The mayor of London is Islamic. The mayor of Birmingham is Islamic. You look at the major cities in England, they're almost all populated with Islamic politicians, and Sharia law is becoming more and more dominant in England. The concerning part about France and England is that they're both nuclear powers. France and England both have several hundred nuclear warheads each. And as they become Islamist nations, they're going to have access to nuclear weapons. That has got to be a concern to somebody somewhere, because they have a completely different philosophy than the host country's original population. So France and England are cautionary notes to what is beginning to occur here in the United States. If you look at Minnesota, you look at some areas of San Francisco, you look at some areas in the northeastern United States.
Dearborn, Michigan.
In some areas of Texas, of all places, they are developing very large Islamic population retreats. And
Epic City is planning.
They're beginning to engage in the politics, so they're following that plan precisely with very predictable results. Now, France is beginning to try to fight back, but it's too late. The Netherlands
Too late.
is too late for France.
Wow.
I believe it's too late now for England. Holland began to fight back, and they're having some success because they didn't allow that to go as far as France and England have. But France and England, I believe, will be dominant Sharia law countries within 5 years or less.
Wow.
And they will have nuclear weapons. They will be nuclear powers.
See, that's the thing that people don't understand. If you've been raised in the United States in the last 25 years, England, good. England, ally, right?
Yeah.
Same with Canada. We always assumed Canada was always had our back. Ireland, UK, France.
Look at what's happening with England in the current situation. Starmer is not supporting either NATO or the United States in the way our alliances currently work. People are claiming that Donald Trump is breaking up the NATO alliance. But if you look, it's France and England that are taking different positions that are placing great deals of strain on that. What President Trump has done, and again, I'm not trying to advocate for or against President Trump. I try to be very neutral in that from a geopolitical point of view. France and England and Spain, which has also developed a very large Islamic community, are beginning to change the dynamics of the NATO alliance. And what President Trump is trying to do is to get them to do what they've always promised to do. He's trying to get them to fulfill their commitments, the things that they promised to do that they haven't done, and yet for some reason he's being credited with trying to destroy the alliance when he's only getting them to try to step up and do what they should be doing for their own benefit. Now, here's the thing. With the Straits of Hormuz, you can look at this and see an immediate application. The United States doesn't get hardly any of our oil from that part of the Middle East. Virtually nothing. We could lose the Strait of Hormuz, and it wouldn't alter 1 penny at the American pump. But England and France and Europe receive almost all of their oil from the Middle East and the Straits of Hormuz because, ironically, they've shut down most of the production of their oil from the North Sea. So they're now importing their oil. Even though they're sitting on major oil deposits, they don't access that anymore. So they're totally dependent on oil from the Middle East, and yet they don't want to go defend those transportation routes. It makes no sense economically, strategically, militarily, or financially. So if your country was totally dependent on your major source of energy from a particular location, and somebody held that location hostage, you would think you would want to go defend it, and they're not. So they're depending on the United States to do all the heavy lifting. And Donald Trump has said, I don't think that's fair. I don't think it's fair for the United States taxpayer to pay for the defense of Europe for 60, 70 years and get virtually nothing back from it. So I've worked with NATO. I was program manager of Top Gun when we moved the program to NATO in the 1980s. I've been there in the 90s. I've lived in Europe for 4 years. I love Europe, but it's fundamentally unfair, the relationship for the United States taxpayer to pay for almost 100% of the defense of Europe in return for what? What have we gotten for that expenditure? Yeah. We've gotten an alliance that is tenuous at best and is unreliable at best.
We see that because England's not doing anything right now.
And we wanted to place. Here's another thing. I want to go back to Greenland because Trump has got a methodology, and people haven't discovered this, and it blows me away how people haven't realized this. Trump is a master negotiator, but he goes in, his first position is outrageous. He tries to be obnoxious in his first position. Remember what he said about Gaza. We're going to turn it into Disneyland.
Yeah, Disneyland. And people are just losing their minds.
Yeah. What he really wanted was the other countries in the Middle East to step up and offer to help rebuild it. Mm-hmm. And what occurred? The other countries in the Middle East stepped up and is now offering to help rebuild that. In Greenland, he said, oh, well, we'll just go take it. We were never going to go take Greenland.
Right.
What we wanted was access to put some of our search radar and over-the-horizon radar systems to detect ICBM launches from Russia and China. And what did we come up with? We now have access to virtually anywhere we want to put military facilities in Greenland. That's exactly what we wanted. He got precisely what he was going for. That's just his negotiation strategy. And it works, because if you go with something obnoxious and irritating and absurd, then when he comes back with something that seems reasonable, you can't wait to accept it.
Right. It's ask for 10, settle for 7 because you wanted 7 in the first place.
He settles for 8 because he would have accepted 6.
Yeah. Yes.
And it's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. But people struggle with seeing the pattern because they focus in on the obnoxious and they don't see what actually occurs. They're still focused on the obnoxious at the expense of seeing what he finally wound up with. Same thing in Venezuela. He gave Venezuela 5 different chances to be reasonable. And when they didn't, he said, you're done.
Yep.
And he didn't go in and take the whole country. He just took the leader.
Yeah.
Same thing that we did in the 1990s with Manuel Noriega in Panama. I was there. I was part of that. I was actually abducted in Panama as part of the lead up to that. So this pattern has been in place now for many, many years, and it works. And it works very, very well as long as people don't lose their mind and get lost in the absurd and start looking at the results.
And that's what we're asking people. If there's no other message that we put forward, it's please look, what we say in business management is always go to the 30,000-foot level, right? Because you get so buried in the weeds that you just don't see the picture. If you go to the 30,000-foot level and you say, if he wasn't doing this right now, where would we be, right? Mm-hmm. So then Trump put out a statement today, which we can hopefully put up on the screen here, where he basically told the UK, man up and go get your own oil, right?
Yeah.
And I've been posting about this forever. The UN, NATO, without the United States, they're nothing, right? And like you said, what do we get back from that? We are the policemen of the world, and they all just expect that we're going to dump billions of dollars and protect, like Canada. We are their shield for Canada. But now Canada is becoming an Islamic nation, right?
Canada, listen, I kind of understand where Canada is going. Canada is an independent nation. They're a free society. I love Canada. I love going to Canada. I love the Canadian people. But Canada has always struggled with a sense of independence. They've always felt like they're in America's shadow. And Donald Trump has made that exponentially worse.
By saying he was going to take it over and make it the 51st state.
Some of the things that he did.
Yeah. Wow.
He triggered something that was already there that was a problem, and unnecessarily. He didn't need to create that level of drama. But Canada has depended on the United States and our money and our resources so that they could spend their money on social programs. If Canada had to spend the same percentage of money on military, defense, economic resources, manufacturing that America has, they wouldn't have the money for their social programs, and their healthcare system they couldn't afford. Right. They couldn't afford their social programs. They couldn't afford their safety network. So we have funded their ability to have the society that they want without recognizing America's contribution to that and providing something of value back. Right. What they've done is they've placed enormous amounts of tariffs on their lumber, their dairy products, their agriculture, and made it very difficult for us to do business with them. When we trade with Canada, we always trade at a loss. Yeah. And that's fundamentally unfair to American farmers, American ranchers, and American manufacturers.
But when you establish that as the norm, then people just assume that's how it's
been the norm for 30 years.
Right. So why would we change that?
Well, Trump has finally come in and said we need to establish a level, fair playing field. Yeah. On the face, who could be against that? But here's the thing, Steve, it's change. And it's dramatic change. Humans hate change. Yeah. We hate change. Yep. And anything that's different has got to be bad. And when I can focus all of that angst and that concern on one person, then I can make all of my feelings about the fact that the world is changing their fault. Then I don't have to take responsibility for it. And that's predominantly what we're seeing is a mass universal activity where people are trying to not have to accept responsibility for the change in the world and the fact that things are becoming more unstable. The world is, listen, there's two factors at play here. Number one, technology is changing faster than any time in history. Nothing is staying the same. Mm-hmm. And it's ironic that human beings spend such an inordinate amount of time trying to maintain the status quo in a world that does nothing but change. It's ironic. It doesn't make sense, but It's human nature. So all of these things that Donald Trump is trying to do are driving massive amounts of change in almost every arena. He's changing everything fast. And people can't keep up with that. And it makes people nervous. It makes people uncomfortable. And frankly, I think most of these changes are very much for the good, but it's very painful to go through them. And when there's pain involved, Americans in particular and humans in general try to avoid pain stimuli. We don't like anything that's painful.
Sure.
So we want to resist that, even though long-term is for our own good.
And the problem that I guess a lot of people don't realize is the status quo as it has been could result in you being decimated.
Absolutely.
Right.
These threats are real. And we're dealing with people that don't want to just replace us. They don't want to subjugate us. They want to
exterminate us. Yeah. Because it's dictated by the Quran.
And the very people who are protecting them, supporting them, and demonstrating for them are the first people they would eliminate.
Yes.
That's hard for me to understand how people can be so oblivious to the truth.
Yeah, we had David here, and we talked about the Queers for Palestine, mm-hmm. and I said that's like chickens for KFC. You would not move those people off of that position, but he very astutely said, send them over to Afghanistan, and I'll give you 3 hours.
People
see
in
if we can catch them.
Will throw them off a building.
They will
in a
be
heartbeat.
dead before sunset.
Yeah, absolutely.
People do not understand the reality of that, and they refuse to accept the reality of that until they are placed in that position where they have no choice but to accept it.
Unfortunately, if things continue the way they are, they will be that way here, and they will experience it firsthand. But by that time, it will be too late.
Right. I've written that on Facebook before. It's like by the time you figure out that you've been invaded, it's too late.
It's too late.
You will be under Sharia law. Enjoy your burqa, mm-hmm. right? And all the things that go along with the laws of the Quran, which are completely unable to be integrated into American society. People's heads will explode.
It's kind of funny, but the people that wear these handmade tail red robes, I view those as practice burqas.
That's a great way to look at it. Yes. Yeah. I had mentioned in the other one, we had gone to a No Kings rally on Saturday, and there were a number of women where they always love that Handmaid's Tale outfit. I don't know why. And one of our people got into a big argument, and they were like pointing fingers at each other. So it is very interesting. I always try to, understand the position of the opposition so that you can work with them. Don't try to shove your belief on them. Figure out where they're coming from so that you can try to diffuse that and provide a counter argument. So I watch CNN, MSNBC, I watch all that stuff. So that's another accusation that people say like, oh, well, you only watch Fox and that's all you do. No, not at all.
No, I spend 2/3 of my time watching alternate forms of information because I've got to validate what I believe. I got to validate what I'm seeing and hearing. If you only look at one point, you will never be a good intelligence analyst. You have to look at all the different perspectives. You got to look at all the different points of view and figure out what fits, what is accurate, What source is this coming from? Has that source been accurate in the past? Does this fit with what I know to be true? And how accurate does this seem to be in terms of fitting into the puzzle and forming the picture that I'm seeing? There's 5 different criteria that I use when I'm evaluating information and intelligence. And we call it OSINT, open source intelligence.
Okay.
And that has become a very big issue, a very big thing. Even the agencies now have bureaus of OSINT. So with the flow of information through the internet, you can find almost anything from almost anywhere. The fun part is figuring out what can you trust.
Right.
You've got to be extremely careful in looking at what you see, because AI now is capable of forming videos that you can't tell are not real. The information out there, it looks unbelievably accurate, and it sounds right. And if somebody gives you something that you want to believe, you're predisposed to believe it without doing much checking.
That's human nature.
And I find that that's the stuff that I have to check the most carefully.
Okay.
And to validate, is that truly real? For example, this morning, there was a story that came out about Iran destroying an Israeli airfield with 40 F-35 fighters. They destroyed the whole airfield. Mm-hmm. That story was recycled from October the 2nd, 2024. But the way it was recycled, the way it was done, it fooled a couple of congressmen.
Wow.
It fooled some intelligence people in D.C. It wasn't hard to invalidate, but the fact that serious people took it seriously at all is not just only surprising, it's concerning, because it just points to the fact that information is so free, it's so fast, it is so prevalent that you can find anything you want to support any position you want to have if that's all you look for.
Exactly.
You have to be discriminating to determine whether or not that's real, whether it's accurate, and whether it's valid. And that's hard. Most people don't want to put in the time, effort, and research to do that part.
They don't have the discernment either. Sometimes not the intellect, but the problem is that a lot of people, the concept of people, some people just want to watch the world burn, right? There's people on Facebook, they're constantly posting these things. I told you, there's AI imagery of a bunch of Iranians around a down F-35, and I've been working with AI enough that I can spot the tells, but there was a flood of people like, oh my God, they shot down one of our planes. It's like, guys, it's not real.
No, there was no human being in the world that could fit inside that plane.
Right.
The scale was totally off.
Right, and it's just a bunch of tells, and then the fact that whoever's posting them, you should stop. They posted a number of them, and they're always different. There's like a black helicopter, and there's an F-35. It's like, guys, come on, just stop. So we're going to take a break, but when we come back, I have some very pointed questions for you and some things that we've discussed that we want to talk about in the last section.
Hit me with your best shot, sir.
All right, we'll be back in a minute.
We will return to our video in just a moment, but I would like to just take a second to ask for your support. The Pennsylvania Faith Coalition is fighting a full-time battle against the spiritual darkness that has overtaken our world, and we really need your help. Please visit our website in the link below to see if we can help you in some way or to see how you can get involved. And if you could, please make a contribution to our nonprofit organization by using the donation portal below. All donations are tax deductible.
Hey, this is Steve. We're back with J.R. McGee, and we're going to ask him some very pointed questions now. He and I have known each other for easily 20, 25 years, and we talk about a lot of this offline. And I've always said, like, man, we got to get you on camera so we can tell people what you know about some of this stuff. So in the first part, we talked about the Muslim invasion of France and England. We also partially Canada, and then we didn't mention, but Sweden, Germany, I mean, Ireland. Almost as many Muslims in Ireland as Irish-born people. Yes. So what is your opinion about the Muslim infiltration of the United States right now?
It's funny you should ask me that, because for the open borders that the United States have had for the previous 2 administrations, Islam in particular has gone to great lengths to try to bring as many people into the United States as possible. And the whole issue about illegal immigration, and you have to call it illegal immigration because when people come into the country illegally, that by definition is an illegal activity. So I don't do political correctness that well. But a lot of people don't seem to understand why the focus on defending illegal immigrants is occurring. And it's not just Islam. It's the liberals in particular, and I try not to get too political with this, but the liberals are defending illegal immigration to levels that don't necessarily make sense. But here's what people don't realize. Illegal immigration and abortion, you wouldn't think those two are related.
No.
They are very tightly coupled. Here's why.
Okay.
The vast majority of abortions committed in this country since the 1970s have been with liberals. Conservatives don't typically participate in abortion.
Okay.
Very, very minor percentages. The vast majority of abortions are liberals. They have essentially aborted 2 generations of their voters. Those voters have to be replaced with someone.
The great replacement. Okay. Okay.
And they have decided the illegal immigrants will vote for them in exchange for voting money and goodies. But illegal immigration is how they are replacing the voters they've eliminated through abortion. If you look, their rolls have been drastically reduced because of the number of abortions that they've had, and it has predominantly affected the liberal side of the equation, not the conservative side of the equation. So in order to replace those voters, they either have to go against abortion or replace them with somebody. And the illegal immigrants, they've decided, is the best strategy for them to rebolster their rolls and their ranks of voters.
So this is why they are massively opposed to the SAVE Act?
Absolutely, because it is affecting their ability to recruit new voters.
But for years, I have been blasted by people on Facebook that said, Steve, illegal aliens are not voting. You don't know what you're talking about.
Oh my gosh, Steve, they're voting in huge numbers. The evidence is overwhelming. You can't look anywhere and not see drastic evidence that illegal immigrants are voting and voting in very large numbers.
Do you have any examples? Because if anybody's out there and they say, you don't know what you're talking about, you just made that up. Like, can you give a concrete example?
Go look right now. There is, and I don't want to use names, but there's a group that does undercover videos, and they've been very famous for doing these undercover videos. And they have uncovered massive amounts of information, actual data, rolls, numbers, where they are recorded showing people that are registering illegal immigrants for $3 per vote. Large numbers.
Cheap.
These videos are dropping online as we speak. And in fact, they said that they were going to arrest this guy again today. Because the politicians don't want these videos hitting the street.
Sure.
But there's massive amounts of information. Look in Georgia. They just uncovered incredibly large numbers of irregularities in the Atlanta County rolls.
All over YouTube.
Look in Minnesota. Large numbers of illegal immigrants are on the rolls. They don't want to go through and clean up the rolls because it removes thousands and thousands of people who aren't eligible to vote. How could you remove those people if they were eligible to vote? The evidence is overwhelming, Steve. And there are so many people that say, oh, it hasn't, because they didn't want it to exist. We just talked in the last segment about trying to understand how to evaluate information and evidence for veracity and accuracy.
Yeah, what is truth?
If you don't want something to be true, you will look at the information and only read the things that validate what you want to believe.
Exactly. That's human nature.
But if you go look at the actual data, you go look at the actual information, it is overwhelming that illegal immigrants are voting and voting in very large numbers. And then the second thing is they just came out this week with information on the last census. The last census, for the first time in history, they used estimates instead of actual numbers. And it underestimated the conservative seats and overestimated the Democratic seats by several seats, well more than enough to swing elections. So for anybody that says that there's no evidence, you're simply not looking. That's willful ignorance. It's not stupidity. I'm not saying stupidity. Ignorance is where I just don't know the truth. Stupidity is where I know the truth, but I either am not smart enough to understand it or I don't want to admit it.
Yeah,
Ignorance
that's a quote
is where
from
I've
V
not
for
been
Vendetta.
exposed to the truth. And willful ignorance is I don't want to be exposed to the truth because if I am, then I have to change my mind.
Right. I'm comfortable in my ignorance, and it may
Yes.
be ignorance, but it's mine, and I get to wear it.
And we hear this cliche, don't confuse me with the facts, because then I'd have to change my mind.
Right.
The evidence is overwhelming.
So, yeah. And a lot of people have taken a position where Trump started a lot of it, but a lot of the Republicans have said now a lot of these elections were rigged. They were thrown. And people immediately say, well, that's ridiculous, until a Democrat loses and then they go, oh, the election was rigged, right?
Yes.
Okay. Jasmine Crockett's a great example of that. She says, oh, you're instigators, you everybody, you election deniers. And then when she got outvoted, she was like, it was rigged. So, but if you want to learn a lot of really great information, I watch a lot of congressional hearings on YouTube.
Check.
Fantastic. And a few months ago, they grilled the head of the Census Bureau. And they said, do illegal aliens vote in elections? Oh, well, I'm not prepared to discuss that today. But it took him a good 2 minutes to get this answer out of him. He said, yes. They got him to say it. Illegal aliens vote in elections.
Yes.
Head of the Census Bureau. Do you count illegal aliens as American citizens for the purposes of voting? Blah, 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 blah. Yes. Took a couple minutes. They got him.
Yep.
And I tell people that I've written that, I've shared that video on YouTube countless times, where I say, that's the guy who's in charge of the Census Bureau, and he just told you.
He's the guy.
He's the guy. It's not Donald Trump, Orange Man bad. That's the head of the Census Bureau. Another perfect example.
And he's not a conservative, by the way.
Exactly. He's not a Trump fan, and he said that.
Right.
Katie Hobbs losing the election in Arizona. And she hired an election expert who came in and did a 2-hour presentation. He did an incredibly thorough analysis, and he said, this is absolutely rigged. There's statistically, it's like 42 billion to 1 that Katie Hobbs could have lost this election.
One of the things that I've done in my career is I used to teach advanced statistics at Drexel University on Saturdays. I don't have a life. And statistically, these things are so highly improbable. They're not impossible,
Extremely
but they're
improbable.
so improbable. You're more likely to get hit by a lightning bolt and bit by a shark in the same day than the statistical probability of the things that we're seeing. So whether it's mathematics, whether it's statistics, whether it's information, whether it's data, it's overwhelming that this is a problem. And no one on either side is ever going to trust our elections again unless this is fixed. And the liberals want to continue this because right now it's working in their favor. The moment it no longer works in their favor, they're going to want to change it. I believe we should change it so it's fair for everybody. It doesn't matter to me which side wins, as long as they win fairly, legally, and ethically.
Amen.
If you can win, that's who should run the country. It should not be somebody who manipulates the system against the American people. The one thing that makes America exceptional, it's not our money, it's not our intelligence, it's not our country. It's the fact that the American people are at the top, not the government. And we're losing that. We're losing that very, very rapidly because it's getting now to where the government is telling us what to do as opposed to us telling the government what they're allowed to do. Yeah. And that that ability for the American people to tell the government what the government can and cannot do, that is American exceptionalism. There's no place else on the face of the earth like that. If you grew up in England, they will tell you what your job will be. They'll tell you where you can go to school. They will tell you whether or not you can start a business. They will tell you whether or not you can, it doesn't matter. They control everything about your life. In France, you've got to get the government's permission to own a business, to own a certain type of car, to have a certain type of property. In America, we still, so far, are free to be what we want, go where we want, do what we want, and say what we want. That's exceptional. No other country on the face of the planet allows the people to determine what they will and won't do and control the government. In every other country on the face of the earth, the government controls the people. And too many people in America now are beginning to believe that the government has the right to control the people. In fact, I hear people saying they want the government to take control of the people.
Yeah.
And that is exactly what we fought to get rid of. That is why America has been free. That's why America has been great. A very famous French person, de Tocqueville, he said, America will continue to be free as long as America continues to be great. When America is no longer great, America will no longer be free. And we're seeing that play out before our very eyes, Steve. We're losing the very thing that allows people to go out in the countryside and in the towns and in the cities and proclaim no kings, to proclaim I'm for abortion, to proclaim I support Palestine, I support Hamas. We allow people to do that. If Donald Trump was a king,
They'd be rounded up and
he would
imprisoned.
never allow people to go out and have those protests.
Right.
No king in Europe would ever allow the people to do what they're doing and say what they're saying.
Right.
That's not what a king, that's not what a fascist does. A fascist would punish you for saying what they don't believe you should say.
Exactly.
That's the definition of fascism.
Exactly.
You're only allowed to say what's allowed to be said. That's fascism. Trump, our government today, I can sit in front of you and I can say what I believe. Yeah,
Really?
but I may pay a price. There's people in your audience that aren't going to agree with what I've said today.
Sure.
There are people who are going to say that I'm wrong. And I encourage them to communicate with me. Show me where I'm wrong. I'm willing to learn. If I've got something wrong, if my facts are wrong, if my data is incorrect, I will change. I'll instantly change. But most people who tell me I'm wrong don't spend a fraction of the time researching this stuff that I do. I have facts. I've got figures. I've got data. I've got information.
You literally live
this.
it. It's your career.
60, 70 hours a week.
Yeah.
I still work 60, 70 hours a week at 70 years old because I don't want to slow down. I'm doing this constantly. This is what I do. This is how I live. And people who are keyboard cowboys who spend 30 minutes a night going in and looking at the internet think that they've got the world by the tail. I would love to have that degree of confidence with that little authority.
Well, everybody on Facebook is an expert in geopolitics. I told you a few weeks ago, you had helped me with a discussion. I talked about Venezuela. Was that legal to go in and get Maduro? And you had written me up this doctoral thesis, which I basically just cut and pasted right into my post. And several people were like, he's wrong. I was like, where did you get your degree in geopolitics from? And I said, guys, don't forget, you're not arguing with me now. You're arguing with this guy over here. And they were like, I don't care. He's wrong. Like, all right, well, so at some point you have to realize, we learned this in marketing and sales. You're not going to close this deal. Move on.
Everybody's entitled to their opinion.
Yes.
Not everybody's entitled to their facts. Facts are facts. And a lot of people like to pick and choose the facts that they use. And that's not only inconsistent, but it's intellectually lazy. You have to look at things in their totality. You have to look at all the facts, because all of the facts are what's needed to form a correct and accurate picture. When you only have certain pieces of the puzzle, you can make that form any picture that you want.
Yeah.
Just because that's the picture you've chosen doesn't mean that that's the picture that's represented by the puzzle.
Yeah. People tell me all the time, like, well, this statistic or this data or this fact or 99% of scientists believe this. I get in a lot of arguments with climate change, this whole thing. I was a geotechnical engineer. I'm well versed in that subject. And I get attacked by people. And I'm like, where did you get your geotechnical engineering degree from? And I say 99% of scientists come to the conclusion of whoever's funding them at the time.
Yes.
Ran a laboratory for many years, authored numerous papers, and I can make numbers sing and dance and jump up and down and do anything I want. That doesn't mean they're real.
The interesting thing is the vast majority of the people that I talk with about the carbon overload have no idea how to explain the carbon cycle. The Earth regulates carbon.
I say it all the time. Earth is, God didn't make a planet that we're going to destroy.
They tell me how man is altering the carbon footprint, but they have zero concept of what the carbon cycle is. They have no idea of how the ocean absorbs excess carbon.
And algae takes a massive amount of carbon dioxide and transfers it into oxygen.
Absolutely.
Algae.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I've had these arguments, and it's at some point you just have to say, you know what? I'm not going to change your mind.
The thing about Facebook, I don't believe there's been a single human mind on the planet ever altered by a Facebook argument.
That's a good point. Yeah.
I don't spend my time arguing on Facebook anymore.
Well, I'm going to say once, maybe in 6 or 7 years, somebody said, you know what, Steve, I hadn't thought about that. That's a good point. Okay. That's valid. Right? And we have a quote here at PFC we use all the time is Einstein. The sign of a truly intelligent man is someone who has strong beliefs, but is willing to change those beliefs in the light of overwhelming evidence.
Absolutely.
I try to live my life like that, right? It's not my way, it's the right way.
I'm always looking for additional evidence. And when I find additional evidence, I have to change my frame of reference to fit the evidence. I can't fit the evidence into my frame of reference.
Exactly.
Because that doesn't work.
Yeah. Don't let the facts get in the way of your interesting story.
Smart people really do question themselves.
All the time.
All the time.
Constantly. I forget what that's called, but we were talking about that offline. So in the time we have left, obviously, as a Christian-based organization, we want to talk about what does God say about this? Obviously, the books of Daniel, Ezekiel, Matthew, Revelation have a lot to say about this.
They do. And in particular, I've spent eschatology is one of my real passions, the study of prophecy. And I've been paying very close attention to the book of Ezekiel. And here's something interesting most people don't understand. Ezekiel's war, listed in chapters 38 and 39, every one of those countries are Shia Islam countries.
Okay.
Every one of them. The book of Revelation for the Battle of Armageddon, all but one of those are Sunni Islam countries. It's not the same battle. Iran is the only country that's the same in both. So how did Ezekiel know that Islam was even going to exist, much less that it was going to separate into two major sects?
Yeah.
But in Ezekiel's war, that's where I believe that we're headed. And Iran is going to form an alliance with Russia to attack Israel. That's not happening right now.
Okay.
If we stop this early and we leave the radical Islamist regime in place, I believe what will result will be something that is worse than what it was when we started. And I believe if that occurs, and I think biblically that's exactly what the Bible's telling us will occur, then that is who will form an alliance with Russia and continue to go after Israel in chapters 38 and 39. That's the excuse me. That's the famous battle of Gog and Magog, and Tubal and Meshach. And Tubal and Meshach is Turkey, and Turkey has, for all intents and purposes, left the NATO alliance. They're now aligning with both Russia and Iran. And Russia is currently tied up with Ukraine. Ukraine's doing far better than anybody ever thought that they could. And Russia cannot afford to get involved in the Middle East right now. But if we leave radical Islam in control of Iran. I believe that they form an alliance with Russia as a result of all of this that becomes even stronger than what it was before we started this. And then that puts Israel in greater peril in the future. And
So-
China is supporting Iran also. China is the reason the Straits of Hormuz are in threat right now. China is supplying the anti-ship missiles to Iran. Very capable anti-ship missiles that they didn't have when this started.
Okay.
That is exactly why 3 weeks into this, the Strait of Hormuz became very dangerous because Iran received a shipment of missiles from China that were very capable of attacking tankers.
And this is stuff that you're just not going to typically see, right? Especially on MSNBC or MS Now, as it's called, and CNN. So, I mean, if we leave people, our audience, with anything, it's you have to realize the Bible is true. God is in charge. We don't get to blow up the planet. God didn't say one day like, oh, I didn't know they were going to do that.
Right.
I didn't see that move coming.
You know, if I look at what has occurred in the past, the Bible was not written as a history book, but historically it's extremely accurate. And if the Bible was accurate then for everything it predicted, and it came true exactly the way it said it would, I have to look at what it says about the future and believe it's going to be as accurate in the future as it has been in the past. As an engineer and as a scientist, I find I don't have enough faith to be an atheist. I don't have enough faith to believe in nothing. I don't have enough faith to believe that the Bible is not true because there's too much evidence that says that it's accurate. There's too many things that it has predicted that has come true precisely the way that it said that it would.
Right.
And things that have occurred in the past are very much indicators of things that will occur in the future. And I believe that everything the Bible tells me that is coming, even when I don't understand it, even when I can't see it, I believe it.
Right.
And right now, what it says about Ezekiel chapters 38 and 39 is coming into focus very quickly. That war is coming.
Which is
and
amazing.
That is going to be a war.
And terrifying at the same time. So we have all these biblical prophecies that have come true. And the last one was, of course, Israel becoming a nation in 1948. So as our pastor always says, there's nothing left that has to come true. Like Jesus can come back at any time. And so as Christians, what do we do about that? And if you're not a Christian, you're now in a position where you're going to stand before God one day and he's going to say, I gave you 52 years. What'd you do with it?
You know, I think what we do with this, the so what, I think if you're a Christian, if you're a believer, now, unlike any time before in my 70 years, now is the time for us to be talking to our friends and our neighbors and our families. Now is the time for us to be telling people about the good news of Jesus Christ. Now is the time for us to be telling people what we know, what we believe. And I think that if we truly believe what we believe, you can't stay silent. You can't stay on the sidelines.
Right.
It is time for you to take a side. It's time for people to stand up. You don't have to be an evangelist. You don't have to go out on a street corner, but talk to your friends, talk to your family, talk to the people you know, talk to the people who respect you, people who love you. If you can't tell them, who can you tell? The one thing I do not want, I don't want to go before my Lord and have him look me in the eye and say, I had all these things for you to do. I had all these people that I needed you to talk to.
And you didn't do it.
And you didn't do it. I had to send somebody else to do your job.
Yeah.
That's the thing that terrifies me most about what happens after I pass away. Yeah. I don't want to have that conversation. So I want to take every opportunity I can to tell everybody that Jesus Christ is exactly who he said he was. He's exactly what he said he did. He's going to do exactly what he promised he would do.
Amen.
He's coming back just like he said he was going to come back. And this time he's not coming back as a loving, kind, gentle Savior.
Exactly.
He's coming back as the reigning king that the Israelis thought he was coming back as the first time. This time he's coming back on a war horse, not a donkey. This time he's coming back with a sword, not a staff. This time he's coming back with a mission, not mercy. And
Amen.
that's not supposed to scare you. That's supposed to wake you up.
Exactly. So if there's any other message in closing, we got to wrap this up. Thank you for this information. But if we can just say one thing, all of these things that are happening are not unrelated. They're not a surprise to God. He knew what was going to happen from the beginning of time, that all this was going to occur. And please, please, please stop and think about, how does this affect your life directly? And when Jesus comes back, are you going to heaven or hell? We have tons of material on our website that you can visit our website, pafaith.com, and look up this stuff. We will provide that for you. Please check out the website, talk to your friends and neighbors, like you said, and we will be back with another message. This is really interesting stuff, and hopefully you can see how this is relating to your life and how important it is to every one of us. Thank you so much for being here with us today.
Amen.
Jim.
It's been a real pleasure talking with you, Steve, and I wish you and your audience the very best. It's a pleasure to be on the Turning Point executive team, and I look forward to working with you and your crew in the future.
Thank you so much. Goodbye.